Yeah. All right, we're going to start with the pop quiz. And some of you may have seen this pop quiz before for me, so if you know the answer, don't reveal it, because I'm going to have you discuss it with the person next to you. And I'm only going to ask you during this presentation to interact with each other maybe twice, maybe 3 times maximum. So this is one, so we'll get this one out of the way right now. If you want to look at what is a predictor of success for a product, when people do reviews of that product or testimonials, which of these would be better? That they're talking about how great the company is or how great the product is? Or if it's someone who wrote a book, and you were looking on Amazon reviews, would a better predictor of success be whether the reviewers were talking about the author, how great the author is, or how great the book is? So I want you to think about that for just a second. Then I'm going to actually have you just discuss it with someone next to you, 1 or 2 people around you. And again, if you already know the answer, don't reveal it, but just discuss this. So go ahead, I'll give you 60 seconds. And no one leaves until you've discussed it.
They're asking you, I know you walk back.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. And it was challenging to stop you. I'm really impressed. I don't usually do morning keynotes because I usually take advantage of the fact that the later in the day I do them, the more people have been drinking, and then I get the interaction. So I wasn't in your breakfast. I don't know what you guys had, but anyway, this was awesome. So is it A, is it B, or is it secret answer C? So that I had a secret answer C is why I was not a very good teacher and my students didn't like this. And this has been, not quite scientifically, but this has been pretty heavily researched in some areas that when users or reviewers of a book, in our case, since my husband and I write technical books now for O'Reilly, we studied it with Amazon reviews among competitors. When the users, and by the way, I'll just get this out of the way, I use the word user in the kind of the best possible way because I care about usability and usefulness, and that keeps me focused on whoever it is that I'm doing something for, whether I'm creating a game or learning materials, they are my users. So that's the word I use. But you can do a search and replace mentally for whatever, whether it's learners or readers or whatever. So we looked at this and found that when people are talking about themselves and what they got out of it, that was the best predictor of success. So when I go onto like a company's website and I look at their testimonials, that's one of the first things I'll do is say, is the testimonial all about how great the company is or how great the product is? And I'll let them debate that for a while. And I'll say, where are the testimonials where users are talking about how awesome they are? So we want to hear people say, as a result of this product, or as a result of this company, in so many words, I'm awesome. Here are the things I can do now. And that's what matters. And so we try to get, companies, whatever they're producing, to say how can they actually elicit first-person language And of course, they have to create experiences that cause that to happen. And we deal with a lot of technical companies where it's all about how cool the product is. It's all about how cool the technology is. And so we just keep beating them over the head and say, no, that doesn't matter, because it just matters how cool the user is as a result of what you gave them and what you enabled them to do. So that's part of what we're going to talk about, is how do you make that happen? So one of the things I want you to think about, and this is the second, see, we'll get 2 of the 3 out of the way right up front, is I want you to think about something just to get in the space of helping people really get good at something and kick ass at something, and how meaningful that is for people. What did you really want to be good at some point in your life, but maybe it just didn't happen? You just didn't pursue it. You just never really got great, but you thought it would be so wonderful if I was really an expert at this. And for a lot of people, it's music or some sport or some activity. So I want you to think for a second about something that you wanted to be really good at, something that would have been realistic, that could have happened, but you just didn't pursue it. So think about that. Now I just want you to just share that with somebody next to you. That's all. Just something you wanted to really kick ass at, but just didn't quite happen. Oh, you're struggling. Okay, I'll stop you. So I want you to think about that. Did anyone hear a really strange one from the person next to him? Okay, you don't have to share it. Did you say mime? I didn't think there could be anything I hadn't already heard. That's really, okay. I got to get that out of my head or I won't be able to keep going. All right, so think about that feeling. What if you could actually do that for people? How are you helping people do that? And of course, for a lot of you, that is what you're doing. So we're going to think about that. Why is it that the experience of being really good at something is so powerful for people? Again, that's something that my husband and I, and our work is about helping people create passionate users. And of course, what we say that's not all that popular is that they should just dump the marketing department and just have educators, because it really is about creating high-resolution experiences for people, that people want to get better at something because that experience becomes deeper and richer as a result of the things that they've learned. People who really get and learn to appreciate and learn more about jazz hear more notes. It's a higher resolution experience. They hear things that the rest of us don't hear. My husband's a rock climber. To me, the first time we went to Yosemite, I looked at that and said, that's just a really big rock. And, he, of course, sees, I see death, and he sees, pathways and handholds, and I see you're never climbing that. So we moved to wine country recently. And, of course, this is from the movie Sideways, and I don't actually drink wine or appreciate wine or believe that this is actually anything but BS. However, apparently, a lot of people really do experience wine in a different way. They claim that they taste more. This is more like my experience. So it's lower resolution. Or in programming terms, my wine experience is only 1 bit. It's either red or white. So being better is better. It's as though the more you learn about something, the more that thing actually appears to change and evolve and become richer and deeper. So that's what we're all about. Nobody's passionate about things that they suck at. And for software developers in particular, it's like our job is to create things that people can feel that they suck at. And then, that's not enough, because then we release an upgrade so they can feel that all over again. So this is the most important, curve and chart and graph that we talk about, and for a lot of producers of any kind of content or product, this is really what's most important. If they really deeply felt that, I think they would produce things that were much more successful for their users. Now, I've been looking at this recently and saying, well, this is ridiculous because this curve is not bad. Look how far the person goes. So that curve is actually awesome, the one that's marked bad. It's just that it's bad relative to the person or the company or the group or the organization that gets someone up that curve more quickly. So really, all things being equal, he or she who gets their users up the curve more quickly probably wins because more quickly they're getting to those deeper, richer experiences. But then for software developers in particular, but other folks as well, we think of that curve sometimes as we're getting them up the curve on our product or on our tool. And that's also not meaningful, motivating, and relevant. That's not the thing that's going to keep people pushing through when they still suck and when it's painful. So we have to not focus on the tools. People don't want to be tool experts. They don't want to have a deeper, richer experience at the tool. They want a deeper, richer experience at the thing the tool enables them to do. And this is, not understanding that is reflected in things like technical manuals. I think it's just my goal in life is just to show this chart for the rest of my life, this picture, because it's the one thing that really just is so upsetting to me. This is how we treat people before they spend in the $2,000 this camera used to cost, and this is how we treat them after they give us their money. So there's so many things wrong with that, and I'm the person who bought that camera. So, but even if, it's a little bit distracting because this is all, color and glossy and better production values than that one. And that's not even what's important. It would be more meaningful if you just made this one just as black and white. Even though there's, definitely relevance in having it be, richer and beautiful colors and sexier and more stimulating. But what's important is that this is about taking killer photos. This is about the camera. This is what people want to do. So the manual, if Nikon really wanted us to get inspired and passionate about taking pictures, they would keep focusing on the fact that it's about the pictures, not about the camera. And Alan, where are you? You said you took the photography workshop yesterday. Anyone else in that? Apparently it was really awesome. And we asked, well, so, did you have to have an SLR? And he said, no, but a lot of people came out of it wanting to buy one. So that's exactly the point. And, that's what, Nikon, of course, could convince people by telling them all the cool pictures they could take if they had, a more expensive camera. That would be in their best interest. So let's help them get good at something. But we have the one big block, which is your brain. Because your brain has no idea that you're not still living in a cave. So, your mind, your conscious mind thinks, gosh, I would really like to learn X. And your brain thinks X is not important. Food, tigers, and sex is important. So they're in this battle. And we have to figure out, especially when we're helping people learn, and my husband and I help people learn the driest, most difficult and challenging technical content. So we really, know how to face this. When I see people who teach photography, I'm sorry, but I'm like, God, that's being handed to you. If you can't make that sexy, but we have to do it with, enterprise, remote protocol. So your mind and your brain are in an epic battle, and the brain, of course, is filtering everything that's coming at it. It's filtering, and trying to decide what it should let through. And of course, this is one of the things that's come out of a lot of recent memory research, is that a lot of the effort and energy that's going on in your brain is not so much devoted to writing things to long-term memory, it's devoted to making sure that you don't write things to long-term memory or even pay conscious attention. So we have to work against that. So if you're a legacy brain and you think you're in a cave, what does the brain decide should get through that filter? Because obviously it's not what you decide, because you know the feeling, and your students know the feeling. For those of you who are teachers, they're reading the textbook, you're reading the textbook, you're in college and your life depends on passing the test the next morning that you're studying for. And you're flipping the pages and you're just reading the same paragraph over and over again, and you just can't stay with it. Even though your mind is motivated, you lose your scholarship, your parents will kill you, and you want to actually learn this, and yet you still can't, even when you're motivated. So how do we actually get through to the brain? What does the brain pay attention to? Because it's not listening to our, what we want. Well, it pays attention to chemistry, that which it feels. So if we can evoke a feeling, then the brain goes, I don't know, it must be important. And of course, when we read especially a lot of dry technical books, it's an emotional flatline. The brain is not feeling any chemistry. So what are the things that create chemistry for the brain? And they can be really tiny, subtle things. Well, the brain pays attention to weird things. Anything that's just a little bit off. So see that little reaction that you had right there? That was a tiny little micro wake-up for your brain. Anything that's just not quite right. Now your eye goes to the purple duck. Anything that's different, scary things. Obviously our brains are tuned for good reason to not find that really appealing. And so there's a reaction. We look at faces, and we see, hey, I don't know what he's looking at, but it's not good. This feeling of thrill and excitement, which is why people watch sports, these are the obvious ones. Our brains are tuned to pay attention and care and have a feeling for innocent young things. Okay, see? I want you all to think about that. Like not one person went, oh, for the baby, and you all did it for the puppy. Just think about that. This feelings of joy and laughter. So anything, so that feeling right there, a micro wake up. Some of you will order this book on Amazon today. It's an entire book, and that wasn't enough, so he made a second volume of just bunny suicides, and they're just so good. Faces, we obviously pay attention to faces. It was very useful at one time to know what those faces look like. If you didn't recognize this face, you probably didn't survive. So, and it doesn't even have to be human or even alive. Our brains are also tuned to look at things and go, wait, that's not resolved. There's something that sucks us in because we want to know what's behind that hand. So there's so many little, cheap tricks to get people to pay attention to say, what's the story? But then there are a lot of things that the brain does not care about. The brain does not care about tablet PC, and it doesn't care about pictures. The smiling, happy computer using person, the picture that is a cliche. So I worked at Sun for a long time in Sun Education, and one time they had a photo shoot for Sun Ed for their new glossy brochure, and the manager came in and said, okay, will you help give us some ideas for this photo shoot? And I said, sure, but whatever you do, please just don't show a smiling, happy person with the instructor pointing to the screen. And that's what they had. The brain doesn't care about code. The mind cares about code. The brain is like, this is so not life-threatening. This is just not interesting. So this is what the brain sees. So these are the challenges that we have. So what we used to say, which was a cheap trick and not altogether accurate, but this is what we used to say. This has been at my slides forever. And this is what we do in some of our books. My husband and I write the Head First books. Is, well, okay, so if the brain doesn't care about code, the brain really cares about that face. So let's just put that face with the code. So the brain will say, I don't know what this code's about, but hey, look, she cares. Well, I'm sure a whole lot of you in here know that that's not necessarily the best trick, because what happens is if you yes, you wake up the brain, and yes, you increase attention and memory and all those good things, except you risk having it be for the wrong thing, because the person goes, that looks just like my ex-girlfriend. And then they're remembering the wrong thing and paying attention to the wrong thing. So, a better cheap trick is to get people to have an emotional chemical reaction that's really relevant to the topic. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as this. So for example, I know there are some programmers in here. The brain doesn't care about UML diagrams. However, any programmer that sees a chart like this is going to have a visceral reaction that something has gone horribly wrong. So when they see any design that ends in this, that's a real physical, painful, awful, nauseating feeling, and they will not forget it. So that's chemistry, and that's chemistry that's directly related to the content. So we just look at ways to constantly evoke those kinds of feelings, things that get through to the brain. The problem with formal, I think most of you already understand this. There have been studies that show that conversational language beats a formal and lecture tone. So there have been a lot of studies about this, and some of them have been so subtle, such subtle changes to the language. It's not like going from lawyer speak to, street slang. It's just changing just a few words to make it feel more like a conversation. And the interesting thing is, why is this happening? Why does conversational language in a book suddenly make people remember the same piece of content better? And same thing with listening to a presentation. And they don't really know for sure, but one of the speculations that's related to other research is that when your brain is reading things that say, you and I, for example, that even though you're reading, and your conscious mind knows it's a book and you're not actually having a conversation, your brain is reading that thinking, I'm in a conversation, I have to pay attention because I have to hold up my end of the conversation. And so it's just enough of a hook. So we use all those tricks, anything that we can do to, again, help people pay attention so they can learn more. So the goal is they can have better, deeper, richer, high-resolution experiences. So here are my little 10 tricks. We'll see how far I get. And some of these are going to be bigger than others. This sounds really obvious. Focus on what the user does, not what you do. But we see so many areas where people don't take that quite seriously enough and don't actually act on it. So the simplest example and that we see in our work is that technical writers will write a book focusing on, hey, I need this book to be a great book. I care about the quality. I want it to be amazing and awesome and really good. Thinking that, that's a really great goal, to make an amazing book. But to make a great technical book, or any learning book, might mean putting in a lot of things, a lot of topics that are not serving the user. So one of the easiest solutions is to say, if you really focus on what the user is going to do and not your thing, you automatically start cutting the problem with featureitis. That suddenly it's not so comprehensive. Suddenly it's not so such a deep, big topic, and you're focusing on someone actually needs to kick ass as a result of this. What makes that happen? So this is one of the exercises that we put people through, is just to think, what would happen if everything we did was based around this question? Not how can we build a better X? How can we build a better user of X? And that's a very different question. Not how do we build a better camera, how do we build a better photographer? And of course, this is the big problem that we get into, is that as soon as we start trying to make an awesome product, we start ending up with featureitis. So another one that's a really easy one is, how quickly can you get people up to speed, at least feeling, it's going to take, for some things, it takes a long time to get up that curve. And especially if getting past the suck threshold is a long period of time, at least give them something that empowers them as quickly as possible. And there's a company that has amazingly passionate users called Electric Rain. And everything they do is infused with that mantra. User must do something cool within 30 minutes. It doesn't say they have to master the program. It doesn't say they have to know everything that's in the interface. In fact, chances are that would definitely not be an empowering experience. So instead they say, all we care about is that user does something cool within 30 minutes. And everything they do supports that, from their tech support to their manual. They have a product manual that we went and explored what they were doing, because people started writing to us about how they had such an awesome user manual that people were changing careers to write technical manuals. And I'm like, don't use that as an example, because it's not really what the field is about. But then they told us that it's because of their user do something cool within 30 minutes. Anything we can do to help make people smarter. So what helps people become smarter? Well, of course, in the technical field, we would like to tell ourselves that it's, brain games, or, using Twitter. The articles that are coming out, the things people do to justify, not having any attention span is really interesting. No, it's improving my creativity. But it turns out, of course, that the brain training and the brain games and even doing puzzles and things like that, while they help a little, it's almost meaningless compared to the fact that aerobic exercise, unfortunately, is the thing that actually improves your brain's thinking ability. So if there's anything we can do to help people, do something physical, and you may not be able to have anything to do with that with your students or your users, but for yourself, just think about that. And of course, we do have lots of gadgets and tools like the Nike plus the Apple thing, so we can still build exercise into our thing. So I'm not going to make you exercise, but I am going to ask you to stand up, and you can just pick up your laptop with you, because this is so easy. Just take it. You know what? It warms my heart. I can't see you, unfortunately, because of the lights. I can see the front row. But I do see a sea of little glowing apples, and I'm so happy. All right. So I think this may be the last thing I'm going to ask you to do, and this is where it's useful that you probably haven't been drinking. So just lift one foot and try to stand on one leg. Just try to stand on one leg. It's not that easy. No. Should have worn the other shoes. Okay, so. Oh yeah, okay. You have a cast on. You have an excuse. Okay, I'll let you off on that. Okay, go ahead, sit down. Now you just got smarter, and if you did this, because you actually no, you got smarter. I mean, not just the standing up, but balance. It turns out that just improving your balance is a big factor in getting smarter, because your brain is wasting cycles trying to keep you upright. So your brain is just leaking, brain cycles trying to keep you balanced. So as people improve their balance, they become smarter because their brain says, oh, I can let that one go. Things like that. And things that we think of as, cognitive leaks, cognitive drains, cognitive overhead. Those are the kinds of things that we should be thinking about all the time with our products, with our interface, with any kind of learning materials and learning experience. Can we reduce as many cognitive leaks as possible so that our users, our learners can have every bit of their brain power going to the thing they're actually supposed to be learning. So, we pay a great deal of attention to any of those kinds of cognitive leaks. So here's another one that helps people stay motivated. So if the brain and the mind are in an epic battle, the more we can do to start trying to get the brain to go, ooh, this feels like it must be relevant. So I know relevance is a big topic, but how do we find relevance when we're helping people learn something or writing, user documentation, for example? This is really one of the easiest ways to do that, is to look at what is the bigger thing that your tool, your topic is a part of. And in this case, it may be that you have a competitor, and instead of going after the competitor and saying, I want to take that on, what is the bigger thing that you are both a part of? And focus on that. So for example, in social media would be, don't blog about your product. Blog about the thing that your product exists to help people do. So I know this is way oversimplified, but for example, if you make kitchen appliances, we tell people don't blog and tweet about kitchen appliances. It's about cooking. And so, find the thing that people are most turned on about to keep their brain engaged. How many of you have read Outliers? Okay, awesome. And of course, I think we've probably all heard, before that book, the 10,000 hours, the really depressing, especially as you get older, the 10,000 hours number. That takes 10,000 hours to get, really master something. But there are ways to actually, shrink that. And even if you can't really shrink the 10,000 hours per se, you can help yourself and help your users by helping them figure out what the patterns are, since experts work in patterns. What are the patterns for really kicking ass? And also, how can you shorten the duration of the 10,000 hours by helping them do their 10,000 hours in a shorter period of time. So we'll look at a couple ways to do this. So do experts know more? Any chess players in here? A few? Okay, so this is a chessboard. This is a chessboard. One of these, chess experts can absolutely recall, and one of them they cannot. So one of them they can recall, one of them they cannot. So of course, I think you, without knowing chess, I'm sure most of you already know the answer to why one of them is more memorable than the other. It turns out this one is far more easily recalled by experts because, although I don't play chess, apparently it's real. It actually makes sense as opposed to just a random scattering of the pieces. So chunking, patterns, thinking in patterns, how can we actually find and capture those patterns from other users to help new users? And also learning to do this knowledge acquisition. This is a really interesting one. There's a man named Bruce Wilcox. Some of you may have heard of him. He's was at one time anyway a really substantial player in the artificial intelligence world. And one of the things he did is he did not know how to play the game of Go, which is, it's one of those computer science problems that no one, we have Deep Blue, right, that can, we have computer programs that can beat the best chess players on the planet. We do not have computer software that can beat even a marginally decent Go player. So it's a computer science problem that may exist forever or until, weird quantum universe computing. But Bruce Wilcox, he said, I'm going to make a software program for Go, even though I don't know Go. So I'll go out and I'll find out what expert Go players actually do. But what he found out is that in the course of that, he became a 5th or 6th black belt level Go player, faster than anyone on the planet had ever been able to even imagine becoming that good. So he became good by trying to find the rules that he could represent in software. And by doing that, he himself became a master player. So, how can we extract those kinds of bits of knowledge representation so that we can help other users get really good? And then the next one is always be practicing. So for reasons that I absolutely do not understand, at the age of, 48, I think, I decided it would be a great idea to start horseback riding. And then at the age of 50, wouldn't it be great if I actually started to compete? So that is the insanity I'm in right now, which is how I found myself in Iceland at the same time. Actually, Ellen happened to be in Iceland. This is an Icelandic horse. It's my newest baby. So, but I thought, God, those 10,000 hours, first of all, it would kill me to spend that much time in the saddle, and my horses would hate me. So I need to find time to practice without actually being on the horse to get those 10,000 hours. And then I discovered that there's a chair called a saddle chair, which is supposed to be better for your back. So I started thinking, So I built, this is my desk. And of course, once you're up like that, then you realize that your desk is way too short. So I needed to find an adjustable height desk, and they're not that easy to find. So I went to Home Depot, and that is a personal scaffold. It's amazing. And that's me on my saddle chair. And it is actually working. Well, one of my horses had to go to rehab. No. And anyway, he went to rehab, and I did not ride a horse at all for 3 months, and I spent a lot of time on this chair, and it was amazing how much I was actually better when I got the horse back, except that my saddle chair desk does not have an attitude. But creating a culture of practice, for people like software developers especially, we expect musicians to practice. We expect dancers to practice. We expect athletes to practice. We expect people to certain people in certain domains, we just expect that, of course, they'll practice. Practice meaning, go into a room or somewhere and do something that's not meant for anything other than practice. Things that are basically going to be thrown away. But software developers, for example, we don't have the concept. We don't have a culture of just practicing. Maybe when we're in a learning mode, but after that, you take your class. No, you're just doing stuff. And practice is what we call beta that we give to our users. So we don't actually have this culture of practice, and we need it because those 10,000 hours, it matters what we do during those 10,000. And actually, it turns out that only 1,000 is needed if you're really effective to be really pretty frickin' good. Now, but we all know this, right? If someone could work for 10 years And you always want to ask, well, what did you do for those 10 years? Or did you just repeat the first 2 years over and over again? Or the first year over and over again? So, in studies of expertise, the amount of time someone's been doing something after the first couple years is not a good predictor of whether they're actually showing expertise. So here's another little pop quiz, but I won't ask you to say it out loud. So Tiger Woods, how much time as percentage does he spend on his strengths versus weaknesses? You know the answer. So that's just one example of helping people find really useful, high-quality, productive ways to practice that will actually build their skills, not just do the same thing over and over again. So again, unrelated to nothing except that this is my passion, for example. With the horses, if you want to improve one of their gaits, so let's say you want to improve how they do the canter. Well, it turns out that you don't improve it by just simply doing a lot of it. I mean, other than some baseline to help their fitness, because if they're doing anything wrong, you'll just be doing that thing wrong more and building in muscle memory. So it turns out, even though it sounds counterintuitive, to improve the canter, you just do in and out of the canter. So you do transitions, you do all sorts of other kinds of practice, and then a miracle occurs, and the thing you actually wanted to be better is better. So we have to construct those opportunities for practice, which serves no purpose other than so that you'll just go. Okay. I used to do puppies all the time, and people called me on it, so it's funny. Another way to really help people is to make your product or your documentation, your help system, whatever it is, actually reflect the way people are using it. So here's the example that you've all experienced, and some of you may have actually been guilty of. I know I have. If we want people to RTFM, right, we have to give them a better FM. And this is the upgrade curve I've talked about. So, I went to a tech conference with the WordPress folks, and a lot of their topics, a lot of their sessions aimed at their developers were talking about, they were just lamenting how their users wouldn't upgrade. And they're like, but it would help them so much, because if they don't upgrade, then they're just stuck here forever. And that's not good. They want to move forward. They'll never be passionate if they don't upgrade. And it's like, yeah, but this is so scary. Nobody wants to suck again. So if you want people to upgrade, you have to assume that they're going to go through a loss. And they're going to mourn the loss of the way they did it. And if we just acknowledge that, and part of it is if they felt like we were going to write good documentation for the upgrade that would help them through it, they would upgrade more. But help and FAQs are not accurate, because here's what happens is the people who write the help and FAQs and the documentation, especially online help, we write it for this guy, who at the time he accesses help and FAQs, he's merely intellectually curious. That's what he's feeling. We write it for him, and he has a pretty good idea of what he's actually looking for and what the problem is. And he'd just like to know a little more. But really, he feels like this. At the time, he's accessing it. So it's such a mismatch. So, and you would, in fact, if you really knew that you were writing for that guy over there and not that guy, you would construct things differently. As starting with the first sentence might be, "Don't panic, it's going to be okay." And now and assume the person does not know what they're looking for, or they wouldn't be going to the help file. So, okay, sorry. So letting people off the hook is the killer app. People feel so guilty. We got an email from a guy who was trying to learn this one programming language, and he said, God, I'm so stupid. I'm dumb. I'm such an idiot. And then he said, and then I remembered, I have 2 PhDs from MIT. And I still feel stupid. So we have to think about that. Oh, I'll go back to that one. And I know that we all know this, and of course no one in here would do this, but so many times you look at things where people are just simply raving about how great their own product is. They want you to feel good about their product. And that just doesn't matter. They need to feel good about their own experience and what they can do. So create a culture of support. So, here's the classic but modified hero's journey, right? Life is normal, something happens. Enter sidekicks and mentors. So we try to look at this and say, this is a learner's journey or the user's journey through coming up to speed on something. And then we say, okay, who plays the role of sidekicks and mentors? And in a Lord of the Rings metaphor, is the person who wrote the help, the documentation, the product, the company, the tech support, are they playing the role of Gandalf, or the orcs? I mean, who are they? And, how do people feel about it? So in that part of that journey, we want to look at, user community. So here's one that I'm very familiar with. I started this group a long time ago, although honestly it got a lot more successful after I left, like quadrupled. But I'm not bitter. So this is their terms of service. This is actually the largest software developer community online, and it's just around Java. So its days may be numbered, but it's mainly just forums, discussion forums. This is their terms of service. Just one thing on their terms of service, but it is militantly enforced. You have to be nice. And it is absolutely militantly enforced. Because here's the biggest problem for communities. If you have a community where you want people to be helpful, and I'm sorry, I will always think of the word community in the sense of usefulness and people getting help and support. Not the social media term where, I hear people say, oh, user groups are just an excuse for people to get together and party. And it's like, no. So, because you all wouldn't be here at 9 a.m. if that were true. So how do you get users to answer and ask questions? And there are a couple of simple ways to do it, but they have to be part of the culture. So the first one is no dumb questions. And I think a lot of communities understand this. People have to feel comfortable asking questions. But then it's so easy for other people to go, hello, search the archives, that's been done before. So having just a few simple policies for how you actually say search the archives can make a huge difference in whether people feel comfortable asking questions. And of course we know that for every community, about 90% of what's going on in that community are lurkers. And they will never convert to askers if they don't feel like it's safe to do so. And the only reason I started Java Ranch in 1997 was because at that time the online forums for programmers were very frightening places. And when I was a newbie. But this one is more important. And this is the one that's most often overlooked in a lot of communities, is we're full of people asking questions who need help. What's missing is people to answer those questions. So we have to allow people to feel like it's totally okay to answer a question wrong. That someone will correct you. Take a chance. So like my husband is on Java Ranch constantly just encouraging people, hey, why don't you take a stab at that? Answer that, just try it. That's part of how you'll learn. So, we spin it as a learning experience, but really it's just so that we don't have to do any of the work, because we'll just get the community to do it. But this turns out to be the most important thing, and it could just be having a couple of documents, very visible, that say, hey, here's how to answer a question, and get people to start having a higher resolution experience for themselves in what it actually means to answer a question. And we have loads of people who've been converted from, people who were asking questions on the forums, to then people who were answering questions on the forums, to then people who thought, maybe I could even write a book. That's where I usually talk them out of it. But no dumb answers. And what does that mean? In a community, let me go back to that one for 1 second. The faster you convert people from askers to answerers, then the more successful and the faster that community is going to grow. And usually we look at it on the hero's journey, that it's only when they get to the end and they become experts, then they come back and help people, right? Well, you all know the experts are the worst person to help the beginners, because they don't have any recollection of what it was like to suffer. The person who is an expert at being a newbie is the person who was just there last week. So the faster we can get people to be answering questions instead of just being askers, the better for the health of the community. But we get into this problem too, which is then we want the community to all be, loving and helpful and supportive, and everyone should feel comfortable. Well, that's fine for the newbies, but then that doesn't make a good environment for the advanced people. Because part of what's cool about being really advanced is that you can use jargon. You can use language that nobody else understands, and it's interesting and cool and shorthand. And there are things that you can talk about here. I mean, there's things I was talking about with Ellen that had to do with, the phrase new media from the old days, and it's pretty cool that I can talk to people here about this in ways that other people don't understand, and I don't have to explain it. And so we can have a deeper, richer conversation because of that jargon. So I see all these forums where they try to wipe out the jargon because it's upsetting for the newbies. Well, separate, put the advanced people and let them reap the rewards of being really good. So measuring community success, this is how we look at it. What's the expertise level of the people who are in that community, and how fast is that growing? And then this is the horse trainer's advice, but kind of applies to everything, especially like user interfaces. Very simple concept, not always easy to implement, but just what can you do to support the right things and make it hard to mess up. So for example, for getting fit, this is a classic example. People have treadmills and exercise equipment in the corner, dusty with cobwebs, and really this is the answer. That it's not gathering cobwebs because you don't use it. You don't use it because it's in the corner. So it's like if you wanted to just guarantee, for example, that your kids would exercise, for 2 weeks, you just take out the furniture from the TV room and you just have only exercise equipment. And they may, first they'll sit on the floor, and eventually they'll go, and they'll just sit on the exercise bike, and eventually it will come on. And eventually they'll find themselves against their will walking on the treadmill. So it's not that hard if you just make things where you'll literally trip over it if you don't use it. So make it easier for people to have a breakthrough than to stay where they are. And this is the last one, total immersion jams. And where am I on time? Okay. So total immersion jams. I think a lot of you are learning professionals, so you already know this, that the frequency matters. So, and if you do something, once a week for a long period of time, then you're always coming back up to speed. So if you can do that over some compressed period of time, certain things will happen. And this is, of course, especially true for creativity breakthroughs. So there's a group of game developers, and these are hardcore, top game developers in the world working for the big, huge game companies. And they said, we work on projects and it takes 2 years at least to finish a game. We don't even have any sense of what brought us to gaming. We were the ones who used to write games over the weekend. And now we're developers doing really amazing things, but we don't have any sense of that creative process anymore. So they got together, they work on games all day at their day jobs, and then they get together like once a month, and they have these jams. And so the Ad Lib Game Development Society, they actually have suggestions for how to run your own jams. They get together, they get like 8 people together, and this is their philosophy: always be closing. The only thing that matters is at the end of the 24 or 48 hours, they have just like a bunch of pizza takeout menus. You have to have finished the game. And it doesn't matter how crappy the game is. So it completely frees them from everything because they just simply have to ship. They have to have the thing done. So that's what they're doing. And they also do it with music, where people get together, and at the end of the 48 hours, you have to come out with a CD of your music. And it doesn't matter how crappy it is, it only matters that it's there. And they said they have learned far more from that than from spending the 2 years on a much more elaborate, high-budget game. And a couple of the games that have come out of those weekends, they're selling. It's just amazing. And then they have filmmaking festivals like this one, which I think is really cute. The 24-hour filmmaking festival, when you show up, they give you a list of things that has to appear in your film, one within the first 30 seconds. So you can't, pre-script. And you have to make these films. And they said just amazing things come out of these films. And they have these kinds of film projects all over the place. And this is I don't know whose quote this is. I wish I did. This is the quote that's on one of the pages for the Film Jam. And I love that. And one of the things I thought was most interesting is the first time I heard about the Ad Lib Game Society, just this tiny little session with like 6 people in the room coming to hear this game developer talk about it. And the person who was in the room really interested in listening was Jeff Bezos. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So, less bar camp, more jams. And be brave. I'm grateful every day that I get the chance to work on stuff that helps people get better, have richer experiences, and have a little bit more joy. And that's what you all are doing too, and I'm really happy to be part of it. So thank you.